So I'm going to give some caveats before I start. That's always great for a thought, right? So Nick reminded me, I think maybe Tuesday, I don't know, Tuesday that Barcamp was coming up, so I completely forgot. So I didn't really have anything prepared, but I started thinking about some things. This is Obsidian. I didn't create slides. I hate slides. So this is more of going to be me kind of floating around what's really a hexagonal inside of Obsidian. To start, my name is John Christopher. There's some links up there where you can find things about like my personal website. SideEffects.dev is a consulting business that Nick Nisi and I are starting or have started. And then I also maintain or wrote and maintain a Clipper plugin for Obsidian. That's just the doc site for that. I want to give kind of a history of my background just so you kind of have an idea of where I'm coming from. So currently I'm VP of Engineering at Arbel. Arbel's a climate risk management company. We essentially do parametric weather products, so derivatives and insurance, based off of data points. A lot of agriculture across the Midwest, but also energy in Europe, et cetera. Before that, I also, as I said, co-owner with SideEffects. Previously, I was CTO at C2FO. There's brackets there. There's and several other titles. To C2FO, my history at C2FO will be a big part of kind of the things I've learned. Being an owner of Bendy Pixels Inc. before C2FO was a big part of that. And then the weather forecaster at the U.S. Navy, as kind of the beginning, will be a really big part of kind of the things that I've learned or things I'd like to share with people. Real quick, I mean, I think we're all kind of aware of this pattern here. Progression, what a career ladder looks like in a company. At C2FO, this is what it looked like before I left. Engineer, software engineer, senior software engineer, and then there's this split. You're either going to go be a manager, you're going to go be a staff engineer, principal engineer. You can either manage people or go down the tech path. At least that's the way I wanted it to kind of push people. And then this circle kind of wraps into either being a VP of engineering and a CTO. There's videos about what the differences are between those two, and it really does. It can be flip-flopped at different companies. This has kind of collapsed a little bit over the last few years, at least from my opinion. This has gotten decimated. A lot of companies kind of were like, engineering managers are gone. Staff and principal, you get to do your job and manage people now. I've seen a little bit of that. Can be okay for smaller teams, but it can be pretty detrimental for larger teams. This is not binary. Like you could go from engineering manager to principal. You could go from principal to engineering manager. That's one of the key themes I have, which is just because you chose to be a manager at one company, that does not mean that you are now a manager for the rest of your career. Even at the same company. I had several people who forced themselves down this way, even though I was like, "You sure you want to do that?" Yeah, I absolutely want to do it. They did it, and they're like, "I don't want to do this anymore." And yeah, no problem. Well, I'll be right back over to staff engineer. You're going to be a contributing member because I know you have the technical skills, and I kind of figured you didn't want to really manage people because it's a huge part of being a manager. Okay. So again, these are going to be thoughts, and I'm happily answer questions. I don't have a rhyme or reason how I'm going to go through these because, again, this is by me building a talk is what it is. So you're getting to go through my thought process. I have kind of a table here with engineer, senior engineer, staff, principal engineer, engineering manager, director, VP, engineering, CTO. The idea behind it was that these areas that I'm going to talk about, I kind of put them in the areas where I think they're the most important for you to understand at that point in your career. And then the larger the text, kind of supposed to be like, this is important. pretty much throughout your career, but I also think it's like one of the most important things. So I'll start with some things over here in the senior engineering section. So essentially says, as an engineer, you have to apply your skills to solve business problems using technology, not solve technical problems. There's nuances, right? If you are in an R&D position or you are in education, that may not be the case. Maybe you do just focus on the technology. When I was CTO, we hit a point where I was not in the hiring process anymore. Like, we got big enough that I just wasn't, the VPs and stuff, they're the ones who were final say in their stacks. So I would have a meeting once a week with any new hires. We were getting at this point, we were getting a lot of junior engineers or people with less experience. And this was the biggest question I always got. What's the most important thing I can do? And in my opinion, this is the most important thing you can do when you start out, is understand that coding is a tool like carpenter skills with wood, etc. You have to apply it to whatever you're trying to do, right? So understanding what the business's goals are, and making sure that you are applying your skills to reach those business goals will make the biggest difference on how your trajectory goes as an engineer, in my opinion. Another important thing, and again, this one here, there's maybe a little age limited. Not really. I think it's really important, and in hindsight, something I'm trying to teach my kids is to make sure that you define a way of working when you're younger or earlier in your career. What does that mean? I laid out some that I personally think are great. I think Peak Work by Cal Newport is a great book you can read. It gives you an idea of what I'm talking about. It's an old book, but The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is amazing. I love it. I listen to that audiobook at least once a year. It has so many key things. They're just like, do some of these basic things in your life. All right, not my hand on here. But those are important things, I think, as you're early in your career. Understand how to calculate. So this one's more on lessons learned. Understand how to calculate total compensation. If a company doesn't share, so if you're going to a startup that has private options they're offering you, and when you are talking to them, they are not open to sharing some information about their cap table, just beware. What do I mean by that? Like, how many shares are in the cap table? You can ask what percentage they're offering you. Just have an understanding of what you're getting into. I'm happy to talk about private company options, et cetera, if you want to talk about that after this. Some people who work with public companies, like there's several, Meta, et cetera, that's a huge part of your compensation, and it's good because it's actual money, right? It's not potentially a tax burden or worth nothing. It's not, yeah. Another key thing that I think that is for engineers to learn earlier on is, from a company perspective, you want to learn how to build for now or for the near future, and not for 5 years from now. This is a thing that I struggled with early on in my career, and it's something that I struggled with as I managed people who were extremely talented. Was they were building a system for 5 years from now, when what we really needed was a system like, I need 6 months from now. I need something that can grow, but let's not worry about problems that we may not even have. I'm going to move over to some of the manager ones before I get down to those bottom ones. But so under the engineering manager director, and I added this over in staff principal as well, because while you're not managing people, you are still a people person. You're going to be involved with people, and it's actually a much harder job, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But get management training. So I said I reached back. This is something that I overlooked as I grew the team to CTO and moved people into management roles. I was in the Navy for 10 years before I started any of my career outside, doing what I do now. I was an NCO. They sent me to management training. The people I managed, I couldn't fire. Like, I just had to figure out how am I going to make you work with this team, right? So there was just a ton of stuff that I learned that I didn't think about outside of that context, right? People, like, hey, you know the most about this thing that you're working on. There's more people around you now. Go manage those people. Sometimes that works out, but most of the time it does not work out. Like, and also, if it is going to work out, it's going to work out a lot better if you actually go and get the management. Right? So, as a director, engineering manager, you should be getting training, and as a VP or a CTO, you should be sending your people to training. You're putting them in that position. As I stated before, don't go into management unless you actually like managing people. That's pretty obvious, but I don't think this is as big a problem as it was. But early in my career, it felt like the only way you made more money was to go into management. That's just untrue now. Like, salaries are generally equivocal across an engineering manager and a staff engineer. VP of Engineering CTO, this is a huge problem that I saw, was you have to hire people that can do your job. I literally had a director once say to me, I didn't hire that person because I felt like he could do my job. It's like, that's the exact people you want to hire, because then we'll get into the next one, which is you want to be able to delegate things, right? And if you think somebody can do your job, then you can delegate this whatever it is to that person. It's important that people understand the different delegation models. The 7.5 book does a really good job, in my opinion, of describing some of these. I think of 3. You talked about, Adam, you talked about interns in your last one. An intern is most likely going to be go for delegation. So if your team can't support that, it's going to be really bad. And what the go for delegation is, go do this, show it to me, and then we'll move on to the next step. Go do this, show it to me, we'll move on to the next step. The next level is more, go do this, and we'll check back in and, at the end of the week. What you want to move towards what Stephen Covey calls stewardship delegation, which is you own this. Here's the end goal. Here's the company's goals. Here's the essentially guardrails of what you can and can't do. Make it happen, right? So you just need to make sure that the people you have in those roles are capable of matching that delegation, right? So you can work an intern towards stewardship, but you probably wouldn't want to do that altogether, right? So this one is manage. This is another huge thing that I saw with people moving into management. And quite frankly, I struggled with this as well. And these two are they're not together, but they can very easily be together. It's not what you deliver, it's what your team or teams deliver, right? That as a manager, that's one of the key things that it's hard for people to deal with. As an engineer, especially like a senior engineer, you get to work on something, you get to deliver it, and you're like, I accomplished something. And every day you're like, I accomplished this ticket towards that goal, and you get that immediate gratification, and you do it day after day. As a manager, it may take weeks or months to see that, and higher up the chain you are, it can take a long time for you to see or feel the gratification of that type of thing. Yes,
so why isn't that part of principal and staff as well?
So in my mind, it's touching it barely. I do think it's a little bit of a concern, but in my mind, principals and staffs are still interacting with technology on a day-to-day basis, where you're getting some of that dopamine hit. You're getting kind of that immediate gratification of I'm doing something, I feel like I'm accomplishing something. And I honestly had a lot less feedback from my staff and principal engineers who were struggling with this. lots of engineers, directors, et cetera, who are always just like, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. I don't feel like I've accomplished anything, even though their teams were the best run and, we're delivering the best. So that's kind of just the common trope or the thing that I saw people fall into. I put this one on here because personally I fell into this trap and it was a huge, it's probably the one, if I could go back and change, the one I would go back and change, and that's don't just stay technically relevant, keep your skills up. And what I really mean by that is I could have very high level technical conversations about why we're moving to this data center or why we got to use multiple data centers or all of that stuff, but I couldn't go and actually bring up a service in AWS or et cetera. I can now, believe me, I've changed that, but there was a point I had hit where I was so away from the keyboard and actually doing some of these things that I honestly think it affected my ability to make good decisions as a leader. Because it helped that I had a team that I absolutely trusted, but at the same time, I couldn't. You become that person that's like, how long could that take? It's just if they'll say, right? It's like you overlook a lot of the things. And also once I finished my role as CTO and stepped away, I knew I wanted to get back into it, and I felt like I lost it for several years, and it just I had to catch back up.
So I've been recently in that position because, like, for instance, React is moving so fast. React 2024, it's not like React 2023. The solution that is allocate time to. It's just time, right?
Yeah. So going back to that way of working, some of the deep work I do now is I will spend 90-minute sessions where I'm literally just doing coding and going through some kind of tutorial or something where I'm building something, and it's not reading about building something. It's not reading about how you should build something. It's literally, if I'm literally just typing what they say, I'm doing it. This is another huge one that I think kind of goes along with the hire people that can do your job. You also have to build and mentor people so they can do your job or level up to their next job. I always found it very odd that when I would have career progression discussions with people, they were surprised that my goal was always, I want you to reach whatever level you can reach here. And if you left here, I might be upset, but I'll be more upset if you're leaving here to either one, do a lateral or not go up to something that we all think is like the next step in your career. So you want to enable your people to build out their careers as a manager. It's going to pay you dividends because one, then they're going to understand that you actually care about them and you want them to be better, and that's just being a good person up front. So all of these get pretty close to touching all sectors, so I'll go over those now. Be humble, but don't fall into the imposter syndrome trap. So this kind of goes along with the one I said before. The be humble is certainly more towards the beginning / principal part of the career. We're all young at some point, and we all think we're amazing at some point, and we can all be assholes at some point. It's just how it works. And I've worked with people, and I've mentored people that I've watched them go from, my God, you're the quintessential developer that you put in a room and let them do what they need to do. Nobody bother them. Nobody talks to them because they're going to upset you. Just let them do their thing, right? The whatever, 10x, 100x, whatever you want to call it. That's not the way to deal with them. The way to deal with them is get them to understand and mentor them on here's how you say what you just said, but use these words instead, right? Because that's how you get to a staff or a principal level. And I said before that in my mind, staff and principal is harder than engineering manager or whatever. And why I tell people that and why I wrote it in our career ladder, whatever you want to call it, was because as a staff and principal, you have to have the technical skills and the ability to communicate to get people to want to do what you're saying and understand technically why it might or is the best route, etc. You don't have a lot of times engineering managers and directors are the people who can choose to hire or fire. And that gives you a level of authority that just that a staff or a principal may not have. It doesn't make sense, but it's how people's mind work. So this person can help me, mentor me. This person can tell me what I have to do, and they can choose to fire me anyway. They may not be the technically right person to make a decision, but that's how it works. So again, that's part of being a staff or principal. Communication is the most important skill as you climb up the career ladder. That one touches everything. And again, I highlighted why it's so important if you're going the technical track, if you're going to go the management track. It's important that you can communicate to your team on why a business is choosing to go down a path. Even though it may not make sense, you should be able to communicate that. And also, as you grow in those director/VP/CTO skills, you are going to be talking with counterparts in your company where you have to explain to them why a technical approach meets the business goals, or why a business goal makes it absurd because insert technical reason why that is just extremely challenging, and the ROI on it may be ridiculous. That is a huge part of the job, and also especially written communication is just massively important. No matter how many, I don't know. People will read something if they see grammatical errors or misspellings, etc. They can overlook it, but always it'll be like, those are easy things to fix. I still run every email that I send that I care about. I still run it through Grammarly. I just do it because I work for a CEO who would be happy to tell you that you did a really poor job in using a word incorrectly or et cetera, right? But, it helped me understand. It's like, wait, people are going to look at you in weird ways if you use things. And I catch myself doing it now. There's people I've worked with, I'm like, and you need to find a way to give those people feedback without being rude as well, right? Like, hey, here's the way I think you could up your game. Another one that is really important is understanding that there's not always a growth path forward in your current company. This is a challenge at CTO mostly because we started out with a bunch of senior people, and you get to a point where the team's large enough and you're building out the company and you want to have a documented career path, et cetera. And people are hitting points where you're like, do I create a new role for you, the new title? We did that several times before we solidified, no, this is the path, and you hit a path and you may not go further. It doesn't mean you won't necessarily get raises. You'll continue to get financial raises. It just may not mean that you become the next level of engineer that you think you should be, et cetera. It also makes it challenging when you have to do some downsizing in your company because you can do some reorg, and it's like, wait, we have two people who are VPs in this one thing here now because you kind of overstack things with that. It's also helpful to get people to understand that it's okay to move to other companies. I feel like we built a culture at CTO that people wanted to stay at. But at the same time, I think it hampered certain people because they never took that opportunity to go do something else. It's just, I think it's important that you share that. The other one, and this is a personal for me, is always be looking, build and extend your network, interview, practice, and understand where the market is. I was at CTO for 12 years. I have the type of mind that the way it works is I get dead focused on something, and that's all that matters. And I also hit a point where, in hindsight, I was so burned out that I just let everything go outside of work. And the network I had, which was mostly in Omaha, by the way, I just kind of let it fizzle out. I, just didn't take care of that. And also when I left C2FO, I hadn't interviewed in 12 years. that's a long time. That is not something you should set yourself up for. So you want, this is something that I share with people now, is it's okay if you like your job. It's okay if you love your job. You should still go interviews. One, it helps you practice interviewing. And two, it also tells you what the market is out there. You can go out there, you can get an offer, and you may find out that I could have gotten, twice my salary or something. Or I couldn't get the salary I was making right now. That's just important things that you should do. And these are things that you should share with your people if you're managing people. Those are the things I had so far. Like I said, all of them should turn this into a talk. Yes.
On the interview was, what likelihood of accepting an offer, if given, do you have to be at before you would choose to interview at a place?
Say that again.
So, I feel like if you're interviewing at a place and you know, even if they gave me an offer, I'm not taking it. It's incredibly unlucky that it's an insane amount of money for me to take it. Then you probably shouldn't interview there because you're wasting everybody's time, right?
You're not wasting everybody's time. So you could argue, and I will argue, that you're wasting those people's time.
Yeah.
You're not wasting your time because you're keeping yourself up to date. Your skills up to date. And if you get an offer that is, you said twice your salary,
or something like that. Yeah, let's just imagine that.
Okay.
That's what it would take to leave.
Yeah.
I need double.
And let's say they don't hit double. Let's say they hit, three quarters more than what, or something, one time more. I mean, you could go talk to your manager at that point. You're like, hey, I'm doing this. I just had this conversation with my boss. As a CTO, I had people come in, I had principals and staff come in who did this. And in the back of my hand, in the back of my head, I'm a reactionary person. I'll be the first to tell you that. I'm like, okay, such a squeaky wheel, right? But in the back, I'm like, wait, this person's doing exactly what they need to do for themselves. They're giving me ammunition to be able to then better everybody else on the team because I have an HR team that may be going, oh, market studies show X. I'm like, I have 3 people that are literally going to leave because they can go make X in the market. This was really big during the pandemic when everybody was like, I don't have to work in this geographic area anymore. I can work in this geographic area, right? It caused a problem because eventually it all came back, and now they're like, well, I want to stay in the geographic area. They want me to move over there. Don't want to move over there. And now I've fighting myself out of the market. But either way, you could get
The other thing